Formula 1's 2022 regulations impact every part of the car. But with the focus very much on the aerodynamic design, it's easy to overlook the fact this is also a critical season for engine development. The power unit regulations are largely unchanged in terms of the technical detail, but the engines used in 2022 will be frozen until the end of 2025. So to use Mercedes Chief Technical Officer James Allison's phrase, the four manufacturers must pack in as much goodness as they can into their engines this year before they are locked in for this and the following 3 seasons. This arguably makes 2022 even more important in terms of engine development than car design. After all, if your new car isn't working, you could develop it and then build an all-new one for the following year. But you are stuck with the power unit package you have got until the end of 2025. Of course, this is Formula 1, so things aren't quite as straightforward as they sound. So it's important to understand exactly how the homologation process works and in what circumstances changes might be allowed in the future. And with the freeze already partly implemented, we will also explain what parts of the engine are locked now that the first homologation deadline has passed. The engine freeze exists to create a period of stability while the manufacturers concentrate their resources on design and development of their next generation F1 engines. These are conceived to be cheaper designs that no longer feature the MGU-H and will be powered by fully synthetic fuels. Freezing the engines is not a new idea in F1. It happened in the 2.4-litre V8 era and ran from 2007 to 2013. This was introduced to keep costs under control and was also an attempt to lock in similar performance levels. There were developmental shenanigans during that period, but ultimately the engine freeze was pretty effective. But since the 1.6-litre V6 turbo hybrid engines were introduced in 2014, the power units have been constantly developed. This new engine freeze covers every part of the power unit and also includes the exhaust system, engine oil and fuel. It kicks in 2 phases, with a deadline for the majority of the elements on March the 1st of this year. This means the engine, turbocharger, MGU-H, engine exhaust system, fuel and engine oil are already homologated. But the MGU-K, energy store and control electronics are not frozen until the 1st of September 2022, so there's still a little time before that is locked in. However, the regulations stipulate there can only be one change of specification for 2022, so as soon as each element is changed, it is locked in, even if there is still time before the deadline. All 4 engine manufacturers had to submit what is called a homologation dossier to the FIA before the 1st of March. This includes details of areas where there is divergence between various teams, including on fuel and oil specification. Save for specific areas where it can be modified, including for the components that are not frozen until September, this dossier locks in the engine specification until the end of 2025. At any time, the FIA can conduct checks to ensure that the power units being used are in conformity with the homologation dossier. If not, the competitor will be in breach of the technical regulations. More on exactly what can change in a moment, but first, thanks for watching this video. It's only thanks to you liking our videos by hitting the thumbs up and subscribing to our channel that we can do what we do. And we can promise you that we have plenty more coverage of F1 in 2022 in the pipeline. So that's the engines well and truly frozen then. Well, for the most part, yes. But the regulations do permit a manufacturer to apply to the FIA to make modifications for specific reasons. These are reliability, safety, cost saving, or what are called minimal incidental changes. There is also provision for what are called minor changes to be made without permission, but this covers trivial changes such as a change of part number or supplier that has no real impact. Even so, these must be logged and rivals informed. Requests to make changes must be submitted in writing with supporting evidence provided to justify the request. For example, if you are applying to make a change based on reliability, you must provide what the FIA calls clear evidence of failures. The same applies for cases of cost or safety, although based on the experience of the previous engine freeze, the reliability case will be the most commonly used. When such applications are made, the requests will be circulated to rival manufacturers, both to ensure transparency and that they are legitimate arguments. But how about minimal incidental changes? Well, these are for car installation purposes and cover just 5 areas: wirings, the exhaust system, turbo compressor position, the position of wastegates, and the position of the pop-off valves. This provision allows for minor changes that might be required to account for variation in car packaging, but also must be requested and given the go-ahead by the FIA. There is no mechanism for performance balancing within the engine freeze regulations. This is because the expectation was that the performance differences between manufacturers would be relatively small. But as we saw under F1's previous engine freeze, the leeway to make changes for reliability reasons can be used to achieve this if any manufacturer is lagging behind. If one or more engine supplier is struggling, we can expect them to lobby for and request changes to catch up. But given these engines are vastly more complex than those used under the previous engine freeze, the FIA and rivals will be very reluctant to allow this mechanism to be used to achieve performance balancing. The engine freeze has led to all 4 engine manufacturers pulling out all the stops to maximise their development with this year's power units. These have already run during filming days and in the Barcelona pre-season test. Although this finished just before the first homologation deadline, there was little time to make anything other than the most minor modifications based on what was learned there. Given the fact each manufacturer powers a different number of teams, Mercedes 4, Ferrari 3, the Red Bull badged Honda engines 2, and Renault just 1, there was significant variation in the mileage completed by each manufacturer in Barcelona. Last year, the performance spread across the engines was relatively narrow. Mercedes and Honda were pretty evenly matched, with Ferrari edging just ahead of Renault thanks to its late-season hybrid system upgrade. All 4 manufacturers have made plenty of changes this year. This is also partly because of the requirement to use E10 fuel, which contains 10% renewable ethanol. This is a change from last year when the fuel had to contain 5.75% biocomponents. This is reckoned to be the biggest change since the 1.6 litre V6 turbo hybrid engines were introduced in 2014 and has cost every manufacturer a little power. Every manufacturer has talked up the extent of the changes. Mercedes claims to have changed more parts of the power unit this year than in any season since 2014 as it bids to stay on top, having won all the Constructors' Championships under these engine rules. Ferrari's powertrain head, Enrico Gualtieri, says Ferrari has opted for even more daring design solutions as a direct consequence of the engine freeze. This includes changes in its combustion technology that it believes have yielded a significant gain. Ferrari has battled to get back to parity with the leading engine manufacturers after sacrificing performance in 2020. This was thanks to a series of technical directives it collaborated with the FIA in framing as a result of suspicions, unproven, that it was running its engine illegally at times. The early indications from testing were encouraging for Ferrari, with rivals seeing evidence the engine is performing very well from the GPS data. A Ferrari-powered car, Nikita Mazepin's Haas, set the fastest speed trap figure in Barcelona testing. Honda is no longer officially an F1, but continues to assemble and maintain what is now badged as the Red Bull power unit. It also pushed hard on development for the 2022 specification engine, making this a full-on Honda engine in all but name, with some significant changes. Then we come to the Renault engine that powers Alpine. This is the big unknown, with major changes made to its power unit that it claims have yielded both a performance and packaging improvement. This includes changing to the split turbo concept pioneered by Mercedes in 2014 and adopted by Honda in 2017. Testing in Barcelona appeared inconclusive given Alpine's struggles, and when Fernando Alonso pulled over in a cloud of smoke on the final morning, some suggested it was an engine failure. However, this was later put down to a hydraulic problem. In fact, Alpine claims to have been pleased with the engine performance in Barcelona despite spending much of the test running conservatively, with its speed trap figures not helped by the fact the team was not able to use DRS for precautionary reasons, although the team wouldn't reveal exactly what it was concerned about. At the second test in Bahrain, we will get a clearer picture of the engine pecking order given it's a more power-sensitive circuit than Barcelona. And given the engine freeze, in large part that will give us an indication of the competitive order for years to come, save for the fact there is still scope for changes in some areas until the 1st of September. And then it will be a question of what the manufacturers request to change, and more importantly, what the FIA allows them to under F1's new engine freeze.